The following is a project of our nonprofit newsroom. Support Midcoast Morning and local community-centered journalism today by signing up to be a monthly sustaining donor at chly.ca/donate. It doesn't take much money to support local news.
Hello and welcome to Midcoast Morning. I'm Joe Pugh. World Ocean Day is Saturday, June 8th. It was first proposed back in 1992 by Canada's International Centre for Ocean Development, an organization that no longer exists. The event was officially recognized by the United Nations in 2008. This year, the theme is Catalyzing Action for our ocean and climate. There are going to be events to mark the occasion Saturday at Maffeo Sutton Park in Nanaimo from 11 to 3 and on Gabriola Island at Degnen Bay from noon to 4. Representatives from VIU's Deep Bay Marine Station will be at Maffeo Sutton. I got in touch with Tim Green from the station for a chat about the day and about his research on shellfish.
Hello, my name is Tim Green. I'm a faculty member within the Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture at Vancouver Island University.
And what's the big message you'd want to share with people in light of World Ocean Day?
Well, I guess the big message is that I really want people to protect our oceans. I'm really quite sad to see how our ocean is changing. Even in my lifetime, it really has drastically changed. And here on the BC coast, it's obviously really, really important to our culture. So things like marine heat waves, ocean acidification, microplastics coming out of our washing machines, human sewage that we're entering into our waterways, these are all having huge impacts under the water. Some of them are not visible. Others, we hear about, like our southern resident killer whales and declining salmon stocks. To really think carefully about, how we can try to reduce the impacts we have on our oceans.
And I want to get into a lot of that in our conversation today. Maybe a starting place. You're a Canada Research Chair in Shellfish Health and Genomics. Some context. What do people need to know about shellfish around BC right now?
So, shellfish are really important to our marine ecosystem. We have farm shellfish, is what I predominantly work on, but there's also vast populations of shellfish that just naturally occur. And shellfish are really important to the environment. They filter feed, so they remove particles out of the water for their food. And that has a number of really important sort of environmental services for us. It reduces the nutrients, so things like our wastewater that end up in the coastal waters. It removes that nitrogen and phosphorus, but it also removes a lot of the phytoplankton, allowing light to penetrate deeper into the water column. That promotes our kelp and our eelgrass, allows them to grow. And that's really important nursery habitat for a lot of the finfish like salmon and crabs and spot prawns that we really value. So all the way through this ecosystem, shellfish are absolutely critical for maintaining, the services and the values that we love our oceans to have.
Can you tell me a little bit about the health of shellfish around our region? I know if you go up and down Vancouver Island and you're at a beach somewhere, you might see those signs that say, "Don't go get shellfish from here." That's the first thing I always think of. But what should I know about the health of shellfish around the coast?
So, there's two parts to the health of shellfish. There's the health of the shellfish itself, and then whether or not it's safe for humans to eat them. So I'll first, answer the first bit about the shellfish and their general health. And they're under stress. We have things like marine heat waves. Everyone can remember the heat dome. And if you lived near the ocean, you will remember the stench of all of those mussels and oysters that just baked in the sun and died. Literally billions and billions of marine organisms died during that event. So that's one stress. But another stress that we can't see, CO2 that's been put up into the atmosphere, a large proportion of that CO2 is absorbed by the ocean. and it's making the ocean acidic and making it harder for shellfish to make their shells. So they're having to invest more energy making a shell. They have less energy for immunity or growth and reproduction. And so for a lot of species, you're starting to see, the abundance in the environment is starting to disappear. So we're losing a lot of our native species of shellfish, and you're starting to see introduced species like the Pacific oyster, manila clam, and a couple of other species starting to dominate in our local waters. And I find that really quite sad. And then, you were mentioning around the signs. Again, there's two parts to shellfish, whether or not they're safe. One is that there's these marine biotoxins that get produced by phytoplankton, and they're really quite dangerous because we can't smell them, we can't taste them, we can't see them, and we can't eliminate them by cooking the shellfish. And when you eat them, if you have a high enough dose, it can be fatal. Those marine phytoplankton blooms that produce these toxins are becoming more abundant under our changing climates. So that's quite scary. But then the other bit is microbial pollution. This is where human feces are entering our waterways because, in British Columbia, we have these huge tidal currents. And for a long time, we were quite happy to let the tide sweep away our human sewage. But of course, filter feeding bivalves around cities are going to pick up those feces, and if we eat them, we'll get sick. And so wild shellfish populations in many parts of BC are not safe to eat.
You work at the Deep Bay Marine Research Institute up near Bowser. Can you tell me about some of what goes on there and the work you do?
Okay, yep. So, obviously I've been talking about a lot of depressing things that are happening on our coastline. Now this is the bit of, where it's fun, and, we're trying to really understand how do shellfish, how are they impacted by climate change, and then using that knowledge to breed better shellfish for the future, largely to support our shellfish industry. But I think that knowledge is going to be really important coming in the future when we want to start to restore some of our coastal ecosystem. And so we've had a breeding program now for 3 generations, trying to breed oysters that are going to be resistant to ocean acidification, marine heat waves, atmospheric rivers, all those different kinds of environmental stresses, and trying to identify, can oysters actually adapt to climate change? And the exciting news is yes, they can. These species are highly adaptable. That may be one of the reasons why, our Pacific oyster, the invasive species, is doing so well on the coast compared to other species. But, it does appear that, nature can adapt. Just hopefully, all species can adapt.
Can you tell me more about that idea of an oyster breeding program? I was watching another clip from an interview you did, and in kind of the outtakes afterwards, someone was making a joke about like music that you play, and you mentioned that you've learned that oysters can hear. I'm curious. There are so many things I want to know.
Yeah. I mean, you think about an oyster and you think of it as just a rock laying there on the beach. No, these are really, really advanced organisms that have been incredibly successful at doing what they do for millions and millions of years. So yeah, they can certainly, detect sound as a little larvae. When the oyster spawns, it releases eggs and sperm into the water column, fertilizes, creates a little larvae that floats around on the water column for a couple of weeks until it finds an area where it wants to settle and become an oyster. They're listening. They can hear the sound of an oyster reef, and they will target in and swim. They detect light, and they can determine where they are in the water column based on photoperiod. So they really are quite advanced little organisms. And so, as we get a greater understanding in these cues that they pick up from the environment, how do we use that knowledge to breed shellfish better in a hatchery is, some of the takeaways that we're learning.
Some of that sent me on a little tangent, and today I was reading articles. There are a ton on the same subject. There was one in The Guardian kind of debating whether or not you can be a vegan and still sort of justify eating oysters. I don't know. You're very passionate about shellfish. Is there anything that you would want to share with people about oysters, shellfish, them, maybe even wade into that debate?
Yep. I'm not going to wade into the debate of whether an oyster is vegan or not, but I definitely, really think people should be considering eating a lot more shellfish. We've talked about the impacts of climate change. I love eating meat. Do I need to eat a large steak every day? No. It's a treat. A small steak once a month is a lovely treat, but I still need animal protein. And, farmed oysters, they're good for you. They're full of all the right amino acids and fatty acids, but they're a species that have a very low impact on the environment. They probably actually have a net benefit when I talk about, earlier, sort of all the benefits of removing nutrients and allowing light penetration into the water column. So yeah, they're a fantastic species to eat, oysters. Same with mussels, and who doesn't love a scallop? So yeah, I really encourage people to get out there and eat our local shellfish. They're sustainable, they're environmentally friendly. An oyster that sits on a beach is having a good life until it's harvested. So yeah, there's lots and lots of good reasons to choose shellfish for your next meal.
And the occasion for our conversation today is World Ocean Day, June 8th. What kinds of things can people do locally to get involved?
So to get involved, World Oceans Day, it really is about everyone getting together this year to protect our oceans. So I really encourage people to get down to Maffeo Sutton on Saturday. We are going to be having, Nanaimo is going to be having a market stalls to celebrate World Ocean, where there'll be lots and lots of different groups within this space with little trade shows. Later in the evening, Vancouver Island University will be doing a screening of Send Kelp. This is a documentary by Frances, who wants to become a kelp farmer. She sees all the benefits of raising kelp as a food source, but also all the benefits that it has for the environment. And so we follow her for a year while she takes on that journey. That will be at the Malaspina Theatre from 6 o'clock onwards. So I really encourage people to get along. It looks like a really, really fun, exciting documentary to view.
And off the top, you talked about maybe a lot of the things that humans are doing to contribute to maybe exacerbating some of the issues around ocean acidification and climate change. Is there anything people on the level of you or I can do to impact these some of these human impacts, or are they huge global issues that need big government regulation?
Well, I mean, people love to say that because no one wants to make the changes. But there's lots and lots of things that you can do. Shop local. Obviously, we spend a lot of fossil fuels moving goods around the world. So, get out to your local farmers market. Consider how often you eat red meat. I absolutely love a giant steak. That's what I grew up with. But I now really question that. Having a little portion of red meat once a month. I enjoy it, but I don't necessarily have to have it every night for dinner. There's a whole range of little things like walking to work. They will all add up and hopefully, reduce those fossil fuel emissions that are really what's driving climate change.
Is there anything else you'd want to share with people in advance of World Ocean Day?
Get down to Maffeo Sutton, appreciate or go for a walk by the ocean. Appreciate what we have. It is one of the most beautiful coastlines I've seen anywhere in the world. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else than in British Columbia. So let's, appreciate the ocean that we have and hopefully take care of it.
Tim Green, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Tim Green is a faculty member within the Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture at VIU and a Canada Research Chair in Shellfish Health and Genomics. World Ocean Day is Saturday, June 8th. There will be events to mark the occasion at Maffeo Sutton Park in Nanaimo. That's from 11 to 3. And at Degnen Bay on Gabriola Island from noon to 4. When Midcoast Morning comes back, we'll hear what's going on at Maffeo Sutton on Sunday.
Midcoast Morning is made possible by the Community Radio Fund of Canada's Radio Meters program and listeners like you. Support Midcoast Morning and CHLY's nonprofit newsroom today by becoming a sustaining donor at chly.ca/donate. Local news can't survive without your support. Another way to help us out is to share this show with your friends and tell them why they should support us. Finally, if you're listening to the podcast edition of Midcoast Morning, go and give us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast feed you use. It helps people find us.
Nanaimo's Pride Parade and Festival is this Sunday, June 9th. The parade kicks off at 11 a.m. with the festival getting started at noon in Maffeo Sutton Park. This week, CHLY reporter Lauryn Mackenzie spoke with Lauren Semple, president of the Nanaimo Pride Society.
Throughout the week, we've got our comedy show, our Sober Pride, and our 19-plus dance, and really that's all leading up to the big Sunday fun day for us, which is the pinnacle of Pride Week. Our flagship event is the Parade and Festival. We parade through downtown. Our regular route has us staging up on Victoria. We come down Victoria Crescent and up Commercial Street onto Front Street and down into Maffeo Sutton Park, where the festival is waiting. We have over 40 floats this year, some huge entries from our community partners, which is incredible to see that allyship and that representation come forward. We're going to have thousands of spectators as usual following the parade down into Maffeo Sutton Park. We're bringing the beer gardens back. We've partnered up with Travel Bar. We're going to have the Kids Zone sponsored by the Nanaimo and Duncan District Labor Council. We've got a full vendor village with over 70 vendors. We have over 9 food trucks, which will be on site as well. A full stage lineup filled with entertainment from our community, drag, musicians, dancing, DJ, lots going on. So it's going to be a really fun day to come out and celebrate and be visible and take up space as we celebrate Pride together.
Mm-hmm. And one of the events that I thought was very interesting, and I saw it happen last year, but it's starting to become a more popular thing that you see at a lot of Prides, but a sober dance party. Mm-hmm. Why is it important to have a sober event during Pride?
A few different reasons. This one's important. This is our second year of doing a Sober Pride event. It's an important investment for the Pride Society to make because there is an intersection of substance use issues and addiction with our community. Anywhere where you find a marginalized community that's dealt with oppression and pain and trauma, substance use can become an issue. And particularly here in Nanaimo, we have a very important intersection with the recovery community. There's a lot of recovery resources and supports and services here in Nanaimo. And we know that a large part of that community is 2S LGBTQIA+. And so making sure that we have an event that is free from alcohol, doesn't include any, intoxicating substances that can, allow them to celebrate in a safe and sober way is really, really important and just helps to make our celebration more accessible to everybody.
How might this Pride or the celebration of Pride or the idea of Pride this year maybe be a bit different with all what that has been happening over the last year?
Pride is always a protest, first and foremost. It comes from the Stonewall riots in memory and honor of that and that uprising. And that is still something that's really important today. I'm hoping that for the allies, that they can start to see that rising tide of homophobia and transphobia and hatred that is being levied at our community in a larger way. Oftentimes, people in the community can feel it, but it's not as prevalent to our allies. And so this year, we're definitely seeing that it's more front and center, particularly with the fact that we do have anti-trans legislation in 3 provinces, some pretty horrific policy in Alberta, particularly that encroaches on the rights of trans youth and gender nonconforming youth in a big way. We're also constantly dealing with the intersections of racism and anti-Indigenous attitudes within our own community and outside of it. So there's a lot happening that I'm hoping will help to draw allies' attention to the fact that there's still so much work to do, not just to finish gaining rights and recognition and respect for every letter of our acronym and in our community, but also to protect and hold ground on the rights that have already been hard fought and won over the decades and generations before me.
Mm-hmm. And sort of going off of that, was there any concerns or problems you may have faced planning Pride this year, maybe after seeing the amount of people that were anti-SOGI in Nanaimo at the end of September?
Yeah, the anti-SOGI protests were particularly heartbreaking and really brought home sort of how embedded in our community those attitudes really are. And so we've definitely continued to we always take, big safety precautions and work closely with, security and safe space providers to try and, make sure that we're hosting the safest events possible as we can. There's certain things that we always deal with, threats, hate mail, that kind of thing, hate on our social media pages. So we work hard to try and, clean that up and protect our community from those voices. But also it's about listening to community and those intersecting identities and listening to what they need to feel more safe. And so a change that we've made recently is to stop bringing in professional photographers on behalf of Pride to our ticketed events. We listened and heard that trans and Black, Indigenous, and people of color within our community were being targeted through our social media posts by following our page, by having pictures posted of them while being at Pride events, to the point where they didn't feel safe attending because they thought their picture may be taken and shared. And we had to listen to that. And with the way that we need to be adaptive with our safer spaces and the increasing privacy needs of our community, we made a decision to not have photographers at our ticketed events. Of course, in public, if someone takes a crowd shot at the parade, there's a chance you're going to be in it, yes. But if you're attending our dance or our Sober Pride celebration, there will not be a photographer in the room capturing your image and putting it on Facebook without your consent. So we're moving to some different things, like having consent-based photo booths only, not including photographers, upping our safe space volunteers, doing greater education with our security providers. So definitely aware of the increased threat and taking as much action as we can to mitigate that.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just shocked by what you were just saying right there, because I guess I have sadly seen that in social media, like photos of maybe trans people now being used, their likeness being used against them on social media, but I guess I never really heard sorry, I'm just shocked by that.
No, it's all good. And people don't realize that our part of the journey in this community is a lot of people think it's queer and trans kids going through, this exploration and this development of their gender identity and their queer identity. But so much of it happens later in life too. And there's so many folks in our community that come out in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And for trans folks and gender, and people with gender expansive identities, they're often going through a gender expression change, and to have that captured at each and every stage through photos and video and then displayed in a public way, it can be really dysphoric, it can be harmful for them. So just trying to listen and take better actions to ensure that we are making the safest environment for as many people as possible.
Going back to the celebration of Pride, what do you say to people who might be a part of the 2S LGBTQ plus community but are a bit too shy or worried to take part in Pride events?
I'd say if you don't feel safe participating in Pride, or if there's some reason in your life that you're not able to participate in Pride, I just want to say that I know I speak for the whole board when I say that we see you and we love you and we're going to miss you this year. And when you are ready and do feel safe to come celebrate us, I promise, or celebrate with us, I promise we're going to welcome you with the biggest open arms we've got. It's sad to me that there are people that don't have the privilege of taking up space and being as loud and proud as I can. I acknowledge that I have privilege that other members of the queer and trans community don't. And I think it's really my responsibility as the president of the board and as part of the society to keep listening to those voices and trying to create better events where those folks can feel safe and represented.
How can people keep the celebration of Pride in the community going even after the Pride events are over? Or maybe after June's over?
Absolutely. I mean, we've got lots happening throughout June. If you go to NanaimoPride.ca, our Pride Guide is up. It gives you links to incredible, not only the Nanaimo Pride Society events, but incredible community events happening throughout the month of June. Everything from drag shows to art drop-ins to projects at Malaspina Theatre, put on by VIU. So lots of great opportunities to connect with the stories of and celebrate the identities within this community. But honestly, Pride allyship in action, that's 365 days a year. In order to stand fully in solidarity and against what's happening to this community, I mean, it takes allies action all the time. And so what I'd really encourage folks to do is connect with the local Pride Society in a bigger way, connect with some of the service groups and organizations we have in Nanaimo providing allyship and access to services such as the Nanaimo Family Life Association, Nanaimo Women Helping Women, PFLAG, AIDS Vancouver Island, and their amazing harm reduction work. There's so many different intersections and channels to support the community year round beyond the Pride Society. And I really encourage folks to look for those opportunities to be vocal and take action beyond June.
Nanaimo Pride Society President Lauryn Semple speaking with CHLY reporter Lauryn Mackenzie. The Nanaimo Pride Parade is this Sunday at 11 a.m., followed by a Pride Festival in Maffeo Sutton Park. That's our show for the day. Thank you for joining me. I'm Joe Pugh, host and producer of Midcoast Morning. Jesse Woodward is our executive producer, and RB Frew is our technical advisor. You can sign up for CHLY's newsletter at chly.ca/subscribe for updates from our nonprofit newsroom and more. Our theme song is First One by local Nanaimo band Waste Management. If you have a story you'd like us to cover, email us at news@chly.ca. That's all for now. I'll talk to you on another Midcoast Morning.
Midcoast Morning would not be possible without the funding of the Community Radio Fund of Canada's Radio Meters program and listeners like you. Midcoast Morning is a project of CHLY's nonprofit newsroom. Support nonprofit journalism in Nanaimo and on the Sailor Sea today by becoming a monthly sustaining donor at $5 or more per month. Support the program at chly.ca/donate. If you're already a supporter, record a voice memo telling others where you're listening from and why they too should support our work. After you're done, you can email it to us. Also, share the podcast with your friends. While Meta is blocking Canadian users from sharing news content on their Facebook feeds, you can still share our podcast directly with your friends via Facebook or Instagram Messenger. Finally, this program acknowledges and gives thanks to the Nanaimo First Nation as we broadcast and podcast from their traditional territory. Thanks for listening.